Okay, so today I'm joined by John Richardson, who is from ICIS and is Senior Asia Consultant for polyolefins and has a vast amount of experience across the polyolefins industry and in this region. John, today I want to talk about the resin supply crisis that's sort of been experienced by not just those here in Australia and New Zealand, but across the world. And I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are around what's been the cause of this supply crisis in polyolefins.
Well, Gerald, it's kind of two halves, if you like. There's the developed world crisis, the supply crisis. So we had the longer running issue with feedstock availability from refineries because of the big cutbacks in demand for transportation fuels, still continuing even though economies are opening up. So that's less propylene available, refinery propylene for polypropylene, less naphtha available for polyethylene and polypropylene, less LPGs, etc. So that's been an issue really since April last year. Then the big bang was the winter storm Uri in February, when most US polyethylene and polypropylene capacity was shut down. Like 80% of capacity was offline at one point in February, and it's still really getting back to normal. And the other thing that's really tipped the market over is this container freight issue, which of course you're aware of. That container freight is very expensive, hard to get hold of in the wrong places. You've got too many containers in one place, too little in other places. And in markets such as Europe, you've had inability to meet demand, and demand is strong. So this is polyethylene and polypropylene, a similar problem in other parts of the world. Asia is very different, right? So last year, Asian pricing was strong. Northeast Asian pricing was certainly strong because of this tremendous Chinese recovery, which was export-led. Our data show that, for example, polypropylene demand was down by 6% in H1 this year versus the second half of last year.
Right.
And this is occurring, and this is because of container freight issues. And for some electronics, the shortage of semiconductors.
The container problem, as in China not being able to export their goods, has led to a reduction in the demand for the polymers because they can't make the products that they were hoping to export. That's what's happened there in China? That's
right. So the China in, China out story. Obviously, They make a lot of their own polymers these days, but last year we saw a 28% increase in polypropylene imports. And across the three polyethylenes, there's about 12% increase in imports. And that's China in, China out as exported finished goods. So if you look at what's likely to be demand this year versus 2019, a pre-pandemic year, then polypropylene demand should be a couple of million tons more than 2019 still.
Right. Okay.
So you shouldn't get too, but it is affecting pricing. And the thing is, because when you come to the actual polymers themselves now, right? And it says HTP as well, because there's a big increase in HTP capacity around the region. It's harder to export out of the region. So for the polymer cargoes themselves, normally you have this escape valve, that you can export to other regions, which would relieve the problems in Europe and Latin America. But they can't get it out very easily, because you see what I mean.
Right. So that's where you were talking about the difference between the regions, Asia versus Europe and the Americas. So you're saying Asian pricing could be 60% higher if they had the export valve, but they don't because of the shipping.
I think that a bit also a slight relative slowdown in China is a factor, along with the shipping.
Right.
But we should talk about Southeast Asia, because other than Singapore, of course, Southeast Asia is a developing region. And the dynamics of demand are very different in Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, etc., especially in the sort of more developing economies in Indonesia. So what's happening, I think, with all developing economies, it's very different from the developed world, where we've had more money during the pandemic than we had before. We're spending more on durable goods. In the developing world, people are being pushed back into extreme poverty or are not escaping extreme poverty, so they can't afford a bottle of shampoo.
With prices being much higher in Europe and the US, like you said, there was the supply crisis in the US, which sort of kicked things off, but they're starting to get back and starting to produce again. How long do you think that that gap could last? Does it just depend on shipping, or is there more to it?
I personally think it'll last for a few more months.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the shipping issue, I don't think will be resolved until or unless the world is fully vaccinated again.
So the massive volatility we've had in supply could continue for a little bit longer.
So I think we've got this dynamic of persistently strong demand in the developed world, weaker demand in the developing world, but the developing world is only a small part of the pie. You know, if you look at China plus the West, that's more than 70% of polyolefins demand. The developing world is going to struggle for a while.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, potentially tight supply and strong demand and volatile supply.
So it's a very interesting outlook, and I think for a lot of us that are sort of working out what we need to do in our supply chains to try and ensure we've got the polymer we need to make the products that Australia and New Zealand is looking for. It's interesting times ahead, and certainly the supply chain teams will all be kept very busy working through those issues that you brought up today, John. But really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and spending the time with us today.
You're welcome, Earl. Very, very happy to do it.
Great. Thanks a lot.